Financial Symposium Spotlight Series, today examining big data technology. The Douglas is an international organization dedicated to educating technology leaders and runs the series to provide a forum on timely topics in the software and technology industry. I'm Schramm, director with Quorum Group and the leading global mid-market M&A firm focused on software and technology. We're partnering with the WFS to bring you this webcast. Today we have a great panel including a broad diversity of perspectives on big data, and I look forward to introducing them to you shortly. Before that, though, we'll have a few opening comments and then a look at the latest specific trends in mergers and acquisitions relating to big data. The Gartner Group has something they call the nexus of forces, four trends that are driving disruptive change in today's technology industry and beyond: social, mobile, cloud, and information, or big data. Social, mobile, and cloud are pretty evident in everyday life, and from the consumer level up through the enterprise. Much of what is driving the big data trend, because as we access our social media, our smartphones, our cloud services, everything we do digitally leaves a trail of data, and mobile and sensor technology continues to mature. Much of what we do physically will be leaving a trail as well. The result is an exponential increase in the amount of information produced. Every 48 hours, we generate the same amount of data as was created from the dawn of civilization through the year 2003, and by 2020, we'll be seeing the same thing happen every hour. Just accelerated scale is creating new challenges in traditional data management. When at the petabyte level, things like storage, security, and compliance can't necessarily be handled by tools built before the data era. These challenges are providing opportunities for small and mid-sized companies, both startups and established firms, with effective, scalable data management solutions. We'll hear about some successful exits that followed this pattern. Perhaps exciting, though, are new opportunities being created by big data within these trends of cloud, mobile, and social, and essentially in every segment. As from at least one of our panelists today, our lives will become more connected and excitingly efficient as the technology transitions the evolving big data landscape, accessing new dimensions of data with ever more powerful tools and opening up entirely new horizons. Modern effort is focused on analytics and visualization. But big data is also bringing along capabilities such as predictive modeling, complex event processing, and more. Many methodologies are in the preliminary stages, but are continually exciting things happening both from a technology standpoint and from the M&A angle. Just that angle in particular, I'd now like to welcome Ilan Gasper, a technology entrepreneur, software executive, and currently Quorum's VP and Director of Research.
Thanks, Rob. As you described, those three trends, social, mobile, cloud, lead to the creation of big data and fuel demand for improved software and services so urgent that it's powering a classic wave of M&A consolidation. Applications of that big data software span a broad range of use cases. These have generated a big bolus of buzzwords now wending its way through much of all Gartner hype cycles. The challenges of scaling and staffing mean there's never enough time and talent, so the top companies are being forced to accelerate the many relevant disciplines of the big data field by means they have in fast markets, by tapping their very full corporate coffers to consolidate the innovators, knowing that those buyers who execute successful acquisition strategies now will be rewarded by latching in market share and value. That trend is evident even by just skimming the disclosed pure-play VC exits as a proxy for hundreds of software company acquisitions in which the big data aspect has played a role. To understand that impact, let's examine some instructive transactions in the recent big data-related deal flow, as classified among 5 of the 6 markets and 26 subsectors of M&A tracked by our firm, Quorum Group. Most all in the horizontal sector, where public value ratios have also consistently occurred, and include applications which addressed enterprise core IT needs, appealed compelling growing big data spending as social, mobile, and cloud again impact the enterprise. This sets the stage for us to look back at the $400 million acquisition of Greenplum by EMC, which arguably led off this phase of the M&A consolidation wave. Greenplum's technology was widely viewed as combinable with EMC's virtualized private cloud infrastructure to provide customers a top solution for big data challenges. The price tag was an early tell, with its estimated nearly 14 times revenues, the highest multiple we've recorded, a warehousing vendor. But clearly worth it, since Greenplum has served as the foundation for EMC's big data division. And last month, it helped EMC rise into Magic Quadrant 1 for data warehousing. And you better find someone to provide you a warehouse. With 90% of all data created in just the last couple of years, look at it this way. The world's 10 times deeper in data now than EMC plucked that green plum. But with less than 1% of that data analyzed, there's plenty of room for other acquisitions to pay off with quick expansions of markets. That's a story with several of last year's Hadoop-related deals executed to enable acquirers at all levels to swiftly turn products loose amidst these green fields. For example, at the low end, on the left, niche Bay Area player W2O broadened its appeal with a patents and tech buyout of Austin incubator graduate Ravel. In the middle, we saw UK public company WANdisco jumps into the Hadoop hall to the tune of $3.6 million in stock, plus $1.5 million in signing bonuses. For a top set, less than a month after Dell closed its multi-billion-dollar buy of Quest Software, the acquired company announced it was buying content mining and analytics provider Katenga to help Quest customers adopt Hadoop and exploit their big data. Business intelligence is how the user sees that sort of big data tech in a space central to big data's utility, where the old guard companies are now challenged by whippersnappers like ClickTech and Tableau, whom we'll hear from on our panel later. A host of new niche players snipping at their heels by assembling sets of tools via M&A. In New York, that includes Opera Solutions, which tapped off its stack ad hoc analysis of government and enterprise big data with Boston-based BIQ and Lexington Analytics. Pricing wasn't disclosed, but Opera's top-tier PE owners dropped $84 million on the upstart a couple months prior. Opera just won an Obamacare implementation contract applying its anomaly detection algorithms for fraud. Finally, last week, IBM showed at least one elephant can still dance as it closed its acquisition of VC-backed business analytics provider Star Analytics. IBM sees an enormous opportunity for our clients to apply Star Analytics to the information they have stored. With the press release with no mention that Star had focused on extracting that big data primarily from Oracle. When herds are on the move, small companies can often realize M&A value from directions little mentioned in their business plans. Now, for a few examples from the vertical markets. Those have recently given horizontal competition in the valuation multiples department, partly because the high-valued SaaS models are becoming more prevalent. That context in which the just mentioned Oracle picked up Dataraker, a SaaS analytic platform that transforms energy data into targeted results for utility companies. The Internet of Things related verticals promise magnitudes more big data and challenges. The Dataraker, that deal with Dataraker closed a few months ago. That was just before Christmas, and how many presents the entrepreneurs raked in was not disclosed. But this is clearly the point in the cycle for those remaining to get viewed by buyers as essential to their struggles with peers. Key point is the announcement in January of Montreal's Neuralytic, a mobile data intelligence company being acquired by Intel-funded Guavus, a provider of decision-making solutions for telecoms. Kansas elite university system has spawned many deep applications of big data, in this case supplying several suites of level leadership, including a renowned engineering physicist. And speaking of engineering and science, that's the focus of Cray's supercomputer line. They are superconducting, and its purchase of Appro last quarter supported in that vertical and in its more broadly ambitious move into big data. Just quickly mentioning a few deals in our infrastructure classification. We start with Carlisle's CommScope buying iTrax, a developer of physical infrastructure management software applying big data sets and interactive 3D models to enable managers to visualize data center usage. Here a couple deals led by Quorum Group, since those big database simulations connect to Estrel that we sold to Ansys last year, while IT infrastructure is challenged by the big data of real-time video moving through it, And we sold Nefsys and its deep code for exceptionally parallelized manipulation of that data to Brother in Japan. And finally, we've located the Cetus deal here in infrastructure, since it rates to acquire VMware's virtualization and cloud platform technologies. But since on our panel today, in a couple of minutes, we've scheduled the CEO who made that sale and is now VMware's Big Data VP. We'll hope for him to tell us more. In the IT services sector, I want to mention just one deal, public sector provider CACI's acquisition of IDL Solutions, whose expertise in big data will be applied particularly in healthcare, as with Lexington, to detect fraud. Also interesting is Gartner's analysis that big data services expenses are running at an outsized 20-to-1 versus software. And outpaces software dev cycles and their prediction that the ratio will be flattening, though with some bumps as applications are built out. Final sector with just one big data related deal to highlight is the consumer market. Here, we call your attention to a small deal announced last week. Yahoo yelled up a recall of a handful of its former Hadoop team, but now their startup, Jibe. The whole is not on display, but even though Yahoo immediately shut down the Jibe product, which appeared to be the start of a heavily contextual next-gen consumer recommendation engine, we view this as far more than an acqui-hire. The team posted that they were eager to start applying everything they'd learned to the Yahoo platform. The search engine industry was big data before it had that name, and the relevance of the search and social network interactions of billions of consumers, particularly the billion that carry a smartphone, make that arguably the most compelling big data out there, an ultimate example of its nexus with social, mobile, and cloud. We'll weigh in on that too, Rob.
Thanks, Elon. We're delighted to have an excellent complement of industry experts on our panel today. I'll start with a quick introduction and then hand off discussion to panel members. Fortunately, one of our panelists, Sudhakar Mudu from VMware, was unable to make the connection today. So in order of appearance, I'd first like to welcome Justin Lafayette, Managing Director and co-founder of Georgian Partners, which is a growth equity firm investing in companies that are exploiting the convergence of cloud-based business solutions, data, and broad information rights. At Georgian Partners, Justin was Vice President of Strategy for Information Platform and Solutions with the IBM Software Group. He came to IBM in 2005 via the sale of his enterprise software company, DWL, a leader in master data management and customer data integration software, which is known as IBM InfoSphere MDM Server. Next on our panel, please welcome Stephen McDaniel, Director of Analytic Product Management at Tableau Software. Tableau in the top right hand corner of Magic Quadrant pertaining to data and analytics. He is recognized as a world expert at analytics and dashboard design and has been on the faculty of the American Marketing Association and the Data Warehouse Institute. He is co-author of Rapid Graphs with Tableau, The Analyst, and SAS for Dummies books. Stephen has worked at Netflix as Director of Data Mining and Customer Insights, SAS as Director of Development, and LoudCloud, now at Hewlett-Packard, as Manager of Business Intelligence and Data Warehousing. Adding cleanup, greetings to Brian David Johnson, futurist at Intel Corporation, weigh in on what the future of big data has in store for us. Brian is a future caster, but he's ultimately a pragmatist. Chip designs have lead times of 5 to 10 years, so it's important to have an understanding of how people will want to interact with computers in the following years. Brian will give us a fascinating account of social scientists, cultural anthropologists, ethnographers, and computer scientists have to say about our techno-future. Lafayette, let's get us started with a two-part question. From the perspective of a growth equity investor, give us your thoughts on the confluence of cloud-based business solutions, big data, and well-contracted information rights. And then secondly, what you use the challenge for emerging companies to get it right.
Oh, much pleasure to be here today. So at Georgian, we have a kind of interesting business model, and we're very, very specialized. So what you just described as the convergence of business solutions with big data and information rights is the only thing that we invest in. And use the term applied analytics to describe this. And we think of this as the next wave of value that's going to be created. We started with big data from an infrastructure standpoint. And it's simply at it from the point of view of what is going to be done with all of this big data infrastructure technology and the vast amounts of data that it's processing and mining in terms of business impact. And the marketplace is evolving to a point where customers really just want to pay for analytic insights delivered inside the business solutions that they're accustomed to at the time it's valuable. And we're at a phase right now where a lot of this activity, companies out there, is using tools to the side from the core business processing activity. And smart people trying to interpret that and make changes to business and have an impact. And where it's moving to is automation of consumption and the seamless impact and improvement of business process through analytics. There's plenty of examples of industries that have been radically changed already like this. Web display and mobile advertising is a great example. But our business is rolling through every business solution area. And the companies that are getting ahead of this, the companies that are disproportionately creating value, are the ones that are proactively thinking through all three of these dimensions. And many companies start from one point of view. So many of the companies that we meet, their original value proposition was simply the business solution. And analytics was simply reporting or things that they kind of delivered as a necessary kind of component. About 5 years after starting and looking at applied analytics, we see more and more companies who are proactively looking at all three of these dimensions, and most importantly, making it part of their strategic focus to grow those dimensions. And they're moving to deliver to their customers is impact and monetizing that in the solutions that customers have trusted them with. Look at that. That means that what's happened with big data is it's democratized the ability to get analytic insight off of massive data sets. The companies that did this early on, like a specialized company like FedEx, for instance, who does real-time credit card fraud detection, they built massive proprietary infrastructures over periods of time to be able to deliver very valuable insight. Now, any startup out there has the ability to deliver that kind of value proposition, and it's radically changing the way a lot of business areas, both vertical and horizontal, create value. So we get the slide. In looking at hundreds of companies over the last several years, we have seen some trends. We've actually initiated our thoughts around this and looked at companies in a white paper we wrote called The 11 Principles of Applied Analytics. And originally we used it just so that we could score and understand the maturity of business solution companies along the path of applied analytics. And we found that a lot of our companies use it themselves now, and a lot of a very good response in the marketplace as a way to think about applied analytics in the context of your company if you're an internet or enterprise software company. Three trends, though, across those 11 principles that we've seen over and over again. One of them, it seems quite simple and intuitive, but it's amazing how many companies struggle with this one, and that's to just, you're looking at the business solution that you provide to your customers, starting with the insights that customers of yours would really value. If are delivering inventory management or supply chain management or cost containment within a specific industry vertical, it's sometimes hard to think of what insights would make a difference in the context of a business solution that you're providing. And many companies do is they look at the data that they have, and they start from the perspective of what data is in this hosted platform that we control. We intuitively know that there's a lot of data here and it must be valuable, so what does the data tell us? And those companies, the ones that we've seen are really leading the charge, they ignore the data that they have, but when they're doing their strategy work and they're thinking how they're going to evolve their company, they instead look at the audiences that they touched. They look at the moments in time that they have a chance to change an outcome and change the impact of a business process flow, and figure out what the most valuable insights they could provide are. Then backwards from that and say, what information and data do I really need to provide that insight? What analytic tooling do I need to provide that insight? What people skills do I need to provide that insight? Inevitably, there are valuable things that can be done with existing data that most companies have the ability to get access to, but strategically, they start to think about data that deliver more and more valuable insights that they don't have, and that they're going to have to get their hands on or earn the right to use. So that's companies we see start with from sites that they think are going to be the most valuable, that they can monetize at the highest level, that they can deliver at the most opportune time, and work backwards to what they need to provide those insights. The second is securing the right to use data from customers, particularly in enterprise software. In the consumer world, consumers are already getting a fair amount of leeway with how their information can be used when you understand the value to them. But in the enterprise world, default position is typically, even though it's a hosted cloud-based solution, the data that's in there is mine if I'm your customer. And many companies, because they want to sign deals and don't want to raise new objections in the contracting cycle, don't address the issue of the right to use that data for other purposes. There's no question from an ownership standpoint that customers own their data. But there's derived data where the ownership is less clear, and there's also the right to use data, which means you don't have to own it, but you're getting permission from customers to use it. The best companies, again, are methodical in thinking through how they get the right to use a broad set of data. If you simplistically look at it, if you do analytics on one customer's data, you can provide a fair amount of value. If you analyze all of the data across a hosted platform, across hundreds of thousands of customers, the amount of analytic insight you can deliver to one customer can be tremendous. And you can base it on a data set that no one customer on their own could ever put together. But to do that, customers have to trust you. You have to demonstrate a high degree of ability to earn trust over time and prove that you're backing up what you say you'll do with information. But most important, you have to prove to customers what's in it for them. And we see over and over again that companies that do a very good job of explaining to their customers what's in their interest to let them use their data, and that they will protect the prospects of it and prevent misuse of the data, but that's something very valuable in it in terms of analytic insight and delivery of that insight. Over and over again, the best companies can earn that right, and often they're the only ones that can earn the right. And the first mover, the one that tackles that issue first, ends up in a very strategically differentiated position. Third one is the delivering analytic insight at scale and at the highest moment, highest value. Analytics for a lot of business solution companies, start with reporting, starts out with customers asking to be able to look at their data, providing tooling, providing analytic environments, visualization tools, and there's a value in that. But the company we see really pushing the highest margins and the high monetization of analytical insight delivery actually find that in cases, insights that are quite simple, but can be delivered at scale into thousands of transactions, into millions of transactions, and differentiate the outcome. Amazon recommending the right product at the right time to millions of people, it can be tremendous amount of value creation. And one of the traps the companies fall into is they get immersed with specific tools that they use to do analytics, and they don't separate the delivery of analytic insight from how insight is created. And the companies we find think of how they create analytic insight is completely distinct to how they deliver it. They think about the delivery as an entire competency unto itself and pride themselves on the ability to deliver insight and change the outcome of a process in stream at mass scale in a huge business ecosystem. And get strategic and thinking about delivery as a separate competency from the creation of insight itself is another one of the traits that we see in the more progressive companies and the companies pushing it. So to summarize, to wrap up with these points that I've been raising, the reason we're interested in this space is, as was mentioned earlier, the M&A activity of some of the biggest players in the world drives valuations very aggressively if they think that you're the leader in a space they want to enter. The belief is that it's a wide array of companies interested in this convergence coming at it from different start points. Enterprise software companies like SAP, Oracle, internet companies like Amazon, eBay, Salesforce, even information heritage companies like Thomson Reuters, LexisNexis, Bloomberg, all to deliver to their customers this combined fusion of business process with insight and information rights. And the companies that get there first, that prove this point in every industry vertical and every horizontal solution, themselves in a position to have their valuation driven, regardless of what liquidity options they explore.
And that's excellent insight and perspective. And intelligent analysis, on an investment standpoint, is high potential but fairly complex market segment. Those remarks. Drew McDaniel, let's go to you next. Tell us about the world of visual analytics and big data and what your customers are experiencing in this rapidly evolving field.
Thank you for having me. Next, please. You may have heard John von Neumann, a hero of mine, and a great quote that applies to the confusion over big data. I think there's a lot of precision and a lot of details when we don't even know what we're talking about. And I think if you're a software executive trying to think about what's the future of big data and how can I play in this field, I think you ask how can you help people with the big data instead of all the technical details. I think the pure play big data is sort of past. And so what we're trying to do is help people understand general questions that they can ask with big data, like someone said earlier. Simple questions quickly and easily answered in an iterative manner is extremely valuable. Next, please. So why is there confusion over big data? Well, I characterize big data in a simple way. It might help. Then there's discussion of volume of data, the variety of data, right? Weblogs, Word documents, emails, you hear a long list. And then the velocity. Like, these are all very important attributes, and these ideas have been around in the data warehousing world for years. In fact, I was using big data at LabCloud before it was called big data. We were analyzing weblogs for customers there. But ultimately, why were we doing that? And I think that's something important to consider. Next, please. So what's missing is the value. Like, why am I collecting this? How are you going to help people with big data? Does big data play with their small data, quote unquote, which might insult some data warehouse old-timers like myself? So big and small data have to come together. And I think the brilliance of what we're doing at Tableau is this idea of big and small data coming together in one world. So we're going to use big data to uncover new insights, not just collecting it. As they said earlier in the talk, 1% of the data is being used in companies. So we want to make it so lots of people can ask questions of the data. Next, please. So I would argue that visualization is critical to obtaining value from big data. There's a lot of traditional techniques in the world of statistics and visual analytics can actually apply to big data fairly quickly and can be used by experts and less technical in companies. So what we're trying to do is make sure that the experts can share their findings from using big data to uncover new opportunities in the business, how customers are behaving, how the business is working. And also, we want to push the really hard problems to the expert analysts and programmers. So the value of visualization is being able to explain it, see it, understand it, and also to have a much wider audience actually touching, using, and querying the big data in a corporate setting. Next, please. So what are the practical limits of visualizing big data? This is an interesting question because as soon as we talk about big data, people think billions of records. And graphical displays have practical limits today. So a typical display is a few 100,000 points, but practically it's less than, let's say, 20,000 points. Even an advanced monitor today, you can see a few million points and actually distinguish where they are. Even if I add some more techniques to encode the data, I still have a limit of maybe 1 million points that I can review at once. So it sounds like visualization might break down very quickly with big data. Next, please. As we move past these limits, you can use big data in a variety of ways. So how do we intelligently aggregate the data for users as they're querying the data? Right? How do we effectively help them choose the right chart to visualize the information? And then how do we let them share it with other people so they can monitor the business? So the ideal is taking the work of the experts, deploying it to the enterprise, and letting them garner the value from this big data, and then the pure play big data vendors benefit, as well as the companies that are helping people use and explore data. Next, please. So I'll show a very quick example, very brief. But I have data from Hadoop. I have market pricing from a traditional warehouse. And in my mind, the core of big data value is merging it with your traditional business data, whether it's in a warehouse, some other transactional system. Merging these two is what I'm demonstrating here. And this is an example I built on my laptop. So actually in Tableau, bring all this together. Next, please. So here I got the top 100 airports in the U.S. And it's, again, 280 million records. I pulled my laptop, so now I'm independent. I'm not running these very slow Hadoop queries. And I can start exploring this. So I click on a point. Next, please. This is actually the rendering time in the old version of Tableau. Now it's actually about 3 times as fast than our version we just released. So I'm actually querying those several hundred million records on my laptop. So I'm leveraging the Hadoop data, and I can see I start in Chicago, right, and go to the rest of the country. Where are the top airports? Also, very subtle down here on the bottom right, I can look at the history of pricing. The idea of bringing data together with corporate data and making it easy to explore, ask questions, and then deploy that to the enterprise so it's actually a live asset instead of a esoteric thing that we keep hearing about but no one's touching. I think that's the key to the future of big data being valuable in the corporate setting. Thank you.
Stephen, that was an excellent and practical real-life application of visualization methods to extract, as you mentioned, valuable and actionable data. So we'll go next to Brian David Johnson, Intel futurist. Brian David's job involves extensive travel, so I recently recorded an interview with him just before he boarded his flight to Budapest. Brian has 20/20 vision, but as you'll hear, he has to take a run at it starting in 2010.
Read with this your publication entitled The Secret Life of Data. Share with us for a few minutes areas of your exploration that relate big data to future users on a personal level. In other words, how big data make our lives better, and what does it mean for the future of big data?
As futurists, as I look 10 to 15 years out, big data will have arrived. Right? We will have it. We will be living with it. We know the baby will have been born, and we will have found if it's a boy or a girl. We will now start getting into the serious business of figuring out who this child is going to be, who this baby is going to be. And so when I think about the future of big data, I think about really the secret life of data. What will data be able to do for us and for people? Because data is completely meaningless. All those ones and zeros are completely meaningless until they come back, touch the lives of people, and their lives better. And that's the bar that I hold for myself. I think that's really the challenge when we think about where big data is going, that just doing analytics, just figuring out what book you would buy or what next song you should buy, to me, is a complete letdown. It is a complete waste of the possible opportunity and amazing things that big data could do. I think to think beyond that. We need to start thinking, how does that then make our lives more connected, make us more sustainable? How does it make us healthier and happier? I think that's really the goal of big data and the thing that we always need to remember.
Can you expand on that just a little bit? How do algorithms, talking to algorithms, machines talking to machines, and sensors and cameras gathering data and so forth, how does that point us to a direction where it becomes more human, more relational, more organic, if you will?
So an algorithm is really just a story. It sounds sort of highfalutin and high-tech, but it's really just a sequential series of steps. It's a recipe, basically how you make a cake. First algorithms were really those sorts of recipes. The way I think of it, it's really a science fiction story. It's looking forward about what we want this data to do, thinking about the effect of it. So these machines talking to machines and algorithms talking to algorithms, we need to understand that it's the human beings that make those algorithms. It's human beings that will build the massive server farms that will run big data.
Sure.
And human beings, we can imbue the tools that we build with our humanity and our values and our culture. So we start to write those algorithms. We need to have an understanding of what it means to be a human. We need an understanding of what part of people's lives will we make better. It's not about efficiency, right? It's about how we make somebody help. How do we make a 65-year-old male or woman living in Florida healthier when they have a history of heart disease and diabetes? I think we get down to that level. Right? We can just stop talking in abstractions. That's one of the things that we love to do when we talk about big data. And believe me, high tech and a lot of futurists are guilty of this, of talking about the bigness of big data. We like to throw around lots of numbers and things like that. But really, when this baby is born, none of that's going to matter. What's really going to matter is the human impact. And I think that's the challenge that we need to set for ourselves, is to figure out, when writing those algorithms, do we have an understanding of the people they're trying to affect?
Wow, that's an all-encompassing vision. That's fascinating. So we're kind of moving up the stack from data onto information, onto knowledge and wisdom and enlightenment. I mean, that's a pretty ambitious track. But I suppose as we move up that hierarchical pyramid, that's what you're trying to surround or lasso within your vision moving out 10, 15 years.
Well, let me speak, Rob, because I think you make a great point. Yeah, I mean, we are moving up the stack. We're moving from little machine code and programming and things like that that into things like the social sciences, into things like philosophy, into things even like different religions. I don't think this is a bad thing. I think that as we move forward, we'll have more computational power. We'll have more intelligence. And what that means is that computer and technology, which is just a tool, tools, our computer and our technology, will actually enable us to be more human. If we have enough power, if we have enough computation, if we have enough intelligence both in our devices and in the cloud, what it means is we can stop just trying to make it work, and we can figure out how we want it to work, we want it to do. For me, I find that I'm an optimist, Rob. I think you'll probably notice that I'm an optimist. And I think that that's a really kind of lovely thing, that technology can now connect us in ways that we've never been connected before, and can actually not only enable us to be more human, but it can enable us to be better humans.
Wow. That's a very encouraging vision, Brian David. I appreciate the optimism on the side of the futurist here. Let me close with this question here. It's kind of a day in the life of an Intel futurist question. Given the long-term planning cycle that future generations of Intel silicon require, something like 10 to 15 years, as you say, how do you ensure that Intel stays ahead of rapidly evolving phenomena like the big data revolution?
Well, Rob, really two ways. And I have two very different days in the life of a futurist. There's the days when I'm in the lab, and the days when I'm kind of doing research, and it's where I'm collaborating with social scientists. We have anthropologists and ethnographers. I'm collaborating with researchers, with engineers, with silicon architects, also collaborating with data scientists. Intel actually has a chief economist by the name of Paul Thomas, who's a great guy who I work with a lot. And then I also work with designers, the people who are going about sort of building this technology. We spend a lot of time really just collaborating with them. What my job is synthesis. So synthesis of all of this disparate information and the things that I'm learning, and coming up with these visions and coming up with these models, if you will, and then working with the technologists and the designers to figure out what we need to do, not only 10 years from now, because I've been Intel now for 10 years, but what we need to do tomorrow, and what we need to do next year, and what we need to do 5 years from now. So that's one side of it. That's my kind of life in the lab, if you will, as a principal engineer. Mm-hmm. And then the other day in the life is I hit the jet. So I spend the majority of my time actually outside of Intel, outside of the lab, and I spend the majority of my time outside of the United States. Working in the lab, they call it future hunting. That what Ryan is doing is going out hunting the future, looking for instances of the future today, kind of all over the world. And it takes me to places like the favelas, the slums in Rio de Janeiro. It takes me to the back lots of the production companies in Mumbai, India. It takes me to lead broadcasters in Stockholm, Sweden. And then right now, when you and I finish, Rob, actually, I'm going to walk downstairs from my hotel, actually get in a car, and I'm flying to Budapest, Hungary, to talk the importance of not only thinking about the future, but also thinking about the past as we start planning our future, and making sure that we not only talk about the future that we want to live in, but we also are talking about the past that we want to be from. So that's really both of my days. Either one is in the lab fiercely communicating, or the other one is sort of fanning out across the world, kind of doing my future hunting. But probably the most enjoyable part of my career is just talking to people, talking to you, Rob, or talking to university students like I did this morning, and having those conversations. Because having a conversation with somebody is how you change that story that they tell themselves about the future they will live in. And that's really how we change it.
Oh, that's inspiring. You have a great job, Brian David. Well, I certainly appreciate talking with you. You give a whole new perspective to the phrase, the future is now. Well, we'll look for these prophetic visions to unfold on the big data horizon in the years to come. Thank you so much again for your time.
Rob, it was a pleasure.
Well, concludes the panelist section. We've got a few minutes left in the session, so let's go to a couple questions that have come in. Stephen, this first one's for you. Quoted von Neumann about precision being inappropriate when we don't know what we're talking about. Great point. And David just said that we don't even know yet if big data is a boy or a girl. Yet you seem sure that the pure play of big data is past. Isn't there a chance that it's just the first phase that's over and the next is bigger?
Well, there definitely is opportunity there, but my belief is that there's so many people who have absolutely no insight into what's happening, and that quote of 1% of data being used, I think, is an understatement. Just because it's being used doesn't mean it's being used effectively. So there are lots of people and lots of companies who are, as we said, we wrote a book, The Accidental Analyst, because we believe this is the future. Everybody needs to use data to make better business decisions, whether they're the shipping manager, whether they're the CFO, or people who work with those people. It's a rapidly changing world, and I think because of the Netflixes and Amazons of the world, people are saying, why aren't we using this data? Where is this data that's been hidden away in this warehouse, and it's sort of sequestered away from my use? And it's a rapid, radical trend that I think will affect what big data mean and whether or not people will invest in big data in their companies. That said, of course, there's always opportunity for better performance, but in my mind, the real excitement is, can we even help people use this big data we can collect today?
Yeah, that's helpful. You mentioned at the onset of your discussion that 1%, I think you mentioned 1% of the data is used in companies today. Using kind of the haystack needle analogy, because the idea is to extract ore from massive amounts of, ever more massive amounts of data, what do you think the upper limit of the percent that's actually reefable ore is? I mean, is 1% about what we can expect eventually anyway, or does that number now move to 20%?
And I feel very fortunate to have worked at a great company like Netflix, where every decision was questioned, including the CEO. And so a lot of people say, I want to be like Netflix, when I tell them I was director of data mining there. And my first question is, can your CEO say they're wrong? You have to look at the data and see if decisions are working, and see if you need to adjust your strategy, and you need to be proactive about monitoring the success of new programs, new offerings, new products. And people want this, they want to do this, they just aren't allowed to do it. They don't have the tools to do it. They don't have the knowledge to do it. So there's a great opportunity in this world of helping people utilize big data in lots of ways, both with predictive, visual, and other methods.
Thanks for the insight. Appreciate that, Stephen. Just final question for you. We've mentioned this earlier during our offline discussion that Gartner is mentioning that big data phenomena will basically be gone by 2015. This is kind of to Stephen's point, that the terminology will basically be absorbed within the fabric of information technology. Now, you'd mentioned something that I thought was interesting. You used the term democratization of business intelligence. I'm questioning, do you anticipate that these emerging companies in the big data and analytics space will dramatically lower the barriers to entry for all companies, from small business to large enterprises eventually, and that benefit will be available across the board? Or just a certain amount of companies kind of get it?
I absolutely have a belief that the impact of big data will start to permeate all levels of kind of business activity. A good example, one company in our portfolio is called Shopify, who is one of the largest e-commerce platforms in the world now, and their customer base are very small merchants. They're very kind of new businesses and the smallest of the small merchants. They have over 50,000 of them now using their platform. And the idea that any one of those little merchants would invest in the type of analytic tooling it would take to get meaningful insight to improve their business is just unlikely. If you look at the last Cyber Monday, analyst reports came out of activity on e-commerce websites. Shopify was the third most used platform after Amazon and eBay. People know that because the branding is each one of those little merchants. So that's more activity than Walmart had, and Walmart will invest enormous amounts of money on proprietary analytics solutions to improve their business and their e-commerce solutions. But Shopify is in a position to analyze 50,000 merchants worth of activity at volumes that even a company like Walmart does, and bring of that insight back to each one of those individual merchants. And that, I think, is a perfect example of democratizing the kind of creation and consumption of insight. In some ways, they can create analytic insights that even a company like Walmart can't do, because their breadth merchant types and product lines aren't as broad as what a company like Shopify would see. So I think it's early days, but I think the pace with which it's starting to happen is accelerating, and the number of companies we see methodically thinking this through has increased dramatically over the last 2 or 3 years.
Thanks, Justin. Well, that concludes our Financial Symposium Spotlight on Big Data. I want to thank you all for attending. I hope you found the session useful. Special to our panelists, Justin Lafayette, Stephen McDaniel, and David Johnson. excellent and insightful remarks. Rural Finance Symposiums is also holding a Growth and Exit Strategies Conference in London on April 16th that I hope all of our friends in Europe will be able to attend. It will be keynoted by CEOs of both AVG and EPAM, in addition to panelists, panels of buyers, sellers, investors, and others. For more information on this event, please visit WFS.com. Thanks again. Are they still on the phone?
I am.